Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come experience the beauty that awaits in Scotland. The sweep of wild coastlines, quiet lochs, and untamed landscapes. Fresh cuisine that feels rooted in the land. Come experience the kind of stillness that stays with you long after you leave. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
If your child's sleep feels like one of the most exhausting, confusing, and unsolved puzzles of neurodivergent parenting, you are not alone, and this episode is for you. Sleep in neurodivergent kids isn't just a routine problem, it's a biology problem, a sensory problem, and sometimes even a nervous system problem. And today we're going to start making sense of it all. Hey, I'm Greer, and this is Neurodivergent Conversations, a space where we have honest conversations about the everyday in neurodivergent parenting, being neurodivergent ourselves, and building community so you never have to feel like you're walking this journey alone. And speaking of community, before we dive in, I want to make sure you know something that I am super excited about happening in, just a few weeks. The Everyday Neurodivergent Parenting Summit is coming, and it is completely free. From May 11th to the 14th, over 20 experts are coming together to share practical tools that actually is going to fit your everyday life. Not that kind of weird version we're told to have. If you're a mama raising a neurodivergent kid, this summit was built for you. Grab your free ticket at theunfinishedidea.com/summit or find it down in the show notes. And I do not want you to miss this. I have been working so hard to bring together the right experts, to bring the right practical tools, as well as making sure we are building community so you never have to feel like you're doing this alone. Okay, now back to our guest today, which is Melisa Moore. Melisa is a pediatric sleep specialist who not only works with neurodivergent kids professionally, but is also a mom who gets it from the inside out. She brings over 20 years of experience and the kind of grounded, hopeful approach that I think every tired parent needs to hear. We're talking about why neurodivergent kids are more likely to struggle with sleep, what actually is going on in their brains and their bodies, and what is realistic bedtime routine can look like. One that actually reduces conflict instead of creating more of it. So let's grab your drink and let's jump into today's conversation. Melisa, you work with kids, but you also have kids who are neurodivergent and kind of work on sleep. Why is it that often neurodivergent kids seem to have kind of more sleep problems or issues?
It's a good question. There are a few reasons. The first one really is biology or genetics. So whatever it is that is causing the neurodiversity in the first place also can cause sleep problems. So they might share some genes or some biological reasons. The second thing is the circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is really the clock in our brain that just tells us when we should be asleep, when we should be awake, when it's night, when it's day. And in neurodiverse people, the circadian rhythm can be a little bit different. So for example, in people with ADHD, it can be shifted a little bit later. And that might be part of why it's hard for people with ADHD to wind down and fall asleep at a certain time. For people with autism, on the other hand, their circadian rhythm can be inconsistent. So one day at 2 a.m, your circadian rhythm might be telling you, okay, time for sleep. And another day at 2 a.m, it might be telling you, be wide awake. So those are two reasons. The third reason is that certain neurodiversities are associated with a higher risk of certain sleep disorders. So, for example, Down syndrome is associated with a higher risk for obstructive sleep apnea. ADHD is associated with a higher risk of the restless sleep disorders. So, restless leg syndrome, where you get a funny feeling in your legs and you have trouble falling asleep because of that feeling. There's also periodic limb movement disorder and restless sleep disorder, and those two things happen during sleep. So there are sleep disorders that are more common with certain neurodiversities. And then the last one is this huge bucket of stuff that's sloshing around, and they're not sleep disorders, but they can cause sleep problems. And those are more medical things like asthma, allergies, pain, eczema, reflux, or more psychological things like anxiety and depression. And we know those kinds of things also are more common in people that are neurodiverse. And so the sleep of neurodiverse people has some things that are stacked against it.
Would you say, so we talk a lot about sleep in kids, but as we say this and you mention restless leg syndrome. So I have ADHD and I have restless leg syndrome, which no one has ever said to me that they could potentially be linked. So I thought that was really interesting when I was reading. But is there a sleep problem? I guess my question is, can there still be sleep problems when you're an adult and we just say, oh, we just kind of brush it off? Or is it really just more of a kind of child teen issue?
No, 100%. It's across the lifespan. So the sleep problems that are specific to neurodiverse people, in some cases might get better, but in some cases might stay the same, and you're just learning how to manage it differently as you get older. So, for example, in younger kids, restless leg syndrome is associated with something called ferritin, which is a measure of iron storage in your blood. This might be getting a little bit too deep, but we know that a ferritin under 50 in kids is associated with that feeling. That's not so much true in adults. So there are some nuances, but I would say overall that the sleep problems that are present in kids kind of linger.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. I'm going to have to go, like, I've never thought about the fact that, yeah, my legs, I always call them my sleepless legs is what I call them, like can be connected. But yeah, I think that's so interesting. And that kind of managing, like you say, as an adult, I probably manage it more or better because I kind of know a bit more as well, if that makes sense. Whereas a child can sometimes not. I'm thinking about, like, we wonder if our son has restless leg syndrome.
Yeah.
And that's a whole process in itself. But he can't always describe what it feels like. It's that kind of.
Most kids can't.
Yeah.
Most kids can't. And so as a professional on the other side, you really have to be open to all kinds of descriptions. So I hear sometimes like bees are buzzing in my legs, or my legs are crackling, or I just feel zapping lightning in my legs. Also pictures. One study showed that kids that draw pictures of their restless legs, it's pretty accurate when their drawings indicate that there's some strange feeling in their legs. Whereas an adult, you could say, I feel a strong urge to move my legs, and it gets better if I move them, at least temporarily. It's hard to have that insight as a kid.
What can help? So kind of moving from the restless legs, because I'm sure no one wants to hear about my sleepless legs, but kind of moving from that into kind of what can make a good kind of bedtime routine. Because I know everything I've read, everything I've heard is like, bedtime doesn't start when they get into bed. It's that, several hours before. So what kind of routine would be a good one?
A bedtime routine is so, so important. When we're driving in a car, we don't wait till we get to the stop sign to stop. We start slowing down a little bit before, and a bedtime routine is going to help our brains to get ready for sleep. And I think about 5 S's when I think about sleep. It helps me remember the good elements of a bedtime routine. And the first one is short. So you don't want an hour and a half bedtime routine, maybe 30 minutes. If there's a bath or a shower, maybe 40. But you want it to kind of have the elements, bam, 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 into bed. The second is sweet. And by that, I don't mean make sure dessert is part of your bedtime routine. I mean that the things that you do at bedtime shouldn't be things that your child really hates or that cause conflict. And so a couple of the things that I see a lot, bedtime is a lot of times associated with reading. And so if your child is really struggling with reading or listening to books, if they're struggling with reading independently, maybe that's the time that you read to them. And if they're struggling with listening to books, maybe you just flip through some books and look at them. Having things that kids actually like as part of the bedtime routine. We're trying to minimize conflict. Another thing that I see a lot, especially in neurodiverse kids, is that brushing teeth can cause a big meltdown. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with that feeling. And so I recommend doing a thorough teeth brushing earlier, not at bedtime. And then at bedtime, doing something quickly. The third is sensory soothing. So, doing something that appeals to our senses. And that is something that every parent will know is specific to their child. So it might be smelling a candle or an essential oil. It might be feeling a certain kind of textured blanket or petting your dog or your cat. Something that really gets to the senses that keeps us in the present and not so much worried about the past or the future. The fourth one is streamlined. So you want it all to be going in the same direction. You don't want upstairs bath, downstairs snack, upstairs books, downstairs hugs. You really want it all to be leading to wherever the child or you yourself are sleeping. And then the last is steady. And so you want the bedtime routine to be as consistent as possible from night to night in general. So if you're reading 2 books, read 2 books every night. Does that mean that they have to be the same books? No. But if it works for you, then you can. But you want to be as consistent as possible. And with all this that I'm saying about a bedtime routine, I really don't want people to give up if they can't do the ideal or if they can't do it every single night. Because research shows us that even if you have a bedtime routine once a week, there's a benefit. So whatever you can do, just move the needle on the compass in that direction so that there's some bedtime routine at some point.
Hi, friends. It's Annie F. Downs here, and I am so beyond excited to share with you that I have a brand new TV show called I Gotta Ask that begins airing Thursday, May 28th on The Wonder Project, which you can find through your Amazon Prime Video app. You may have heard of The Wonder Project because they're the ones who brought you The House of David, and I am so honored and honestly have zero chill that I get to partner with them to make this dream come true. I love how Wonder Project is not only creating great original TV and movies that audiences can experience together, but also curating content via their subscription on Prime Video filled with meaningful stories. The first 2 episodes of my talk show, I Gotta Ask, premiere on May 28th, followed by 2 episodes each on June 4th and June 11th. In every episode, I sit down with a group of friends, some experts in their fields and some thought leaders, some just my real life people. And we talk about things like, why is dating so hard in 2026? Or how do I build a business? What do I do with fear and anxiety? And so many more questions that I just had to ask. I cannot wait to hear what you think. You can subscribe today at igottaask.com.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
So it's a little freeing to know even having one night a week, having that routine can be really helpful and really freeing. Yeah, it's really funny. The whole teeth thing, that's a big thing as well for quite a few families. We've just had to do some really intense dental work on my son because he refuses to brush his teeth at night. And well, in general, not just at night, but like that kind of thing. And we found, first thing we do when we get home now is brush his teeth because to be honest, because he's on the iPad, I'll just be honest, we have 30 minutes straight after school. He gets iPad because he just needs that decompressing and means we can brush his teeth. So yeah, that's such a good...
I think that sounds like a great idea, actually.
Yeah.
I think that whatever you need to do to make that happen is okay. We're all going to be, every specialist is going to tell you what the ideal is in their field. So the dentist is going to tell you, floss every day, brush 3 times a day for 2 minutes or whatever. I'm going to say here are the ideal sleep, recommendations. But we have to fit those ideals into our real lives. And as parents, we're not just focusing on sleep. We're not just focusing on teeth. We're focusing on all of it. And so you just have to figure out how to make all those puzzle pieces fit.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I remember. I sat in our dentist office literally yesterday. And they're like, oh, because he also has to take some supplements because he eats, he has a very narrow food. The dentist's like, we don't like those. And I said, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I want my child to live. So I'm just gonna keep going. Like, I was like, I'm really sorry that you don't like them, but like,
I mean, step one, keep your child alive. That's step one.
Yeah.
What
about talking about kind of iPad time and how my son loves his iPad? There's so many mixed kind of thoughts on this. I would love to know kind of what are your thoughts on iPad before bed, iPad, kind of all of that.
There's some new research that's come out. And it's finding that all electronics for all people are not terrible for sleep all the time. And I'm not recommending that you introduce electronics into the bedtime routine, but sometimes that's the only way a child will stay in their bedroom. And in that case, I don't recommend necessarily taking it away. What the research shows us is that for some people, so if you have a lot of trouble winding down, turning your mind off, if you have a lot of anxious thoughts or dark thoughts, those things tend to come out at bedtime. For a lot of us, it's the first time we've been quiet enough to even notice our own thoughts. And so in those cases, what the research is showing is that electronics before bed is not necessarily terrible. And it can actually shorten the time that it takes to fall asleep because you're not introducing all those difficult thoughts. You're not going down the rabbit hole of thinking. That said, I think if possible, it's not a good idea to fall asleep to electronics. So if you can, for example, do the iPad, turn it off, get into bed and close eyes, that is better. But I also, again, like to use a good, better, best approach. So the best might be no electronics at bedtime. Good might be a TV show instead of YouTube. We still, again, can move the needle in the right direction. And I think that's okay. I have a little bit of a more nuanced, probably more flexible view than some people about electronics at bedtime, but I really use the science and the research as my guide. And we're finding out new things all the time. And one of those things is just how nuanced electronic use at bedtime really is.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about. Again, having that kind of layer of good, better, best, and kind of just realizing that there are going to be days where the best is going to work and there are going to be days where the good is going to work.
Exactly.
And it's not, it's still good. I think that's like, as you were saying that, I was like, it's still good. It's still good.
It's still good. And listen, I do this for a living. And still it's really hard. And I am not doing the best every single day at sleep either. So I think try to give yourself some grace on those nights and do what's best for the whole family and for the whole child. So sleep, I do this for a living again. So I think sleep is fundamentally important. But I also think, especially when it comes to neurodiversity, we have to be flexible.
Okay, so I know I work with some parents who their setup for their sleep is, they have noise, they have lights, they have and they're always like, how do their kids get to actually sleep with all the things? But they know their child needs those things to sleep. Do you recommend or have suggestions of certain noises or kind of lights that are more helpful usually? Or
I'm so glad you asked that question. And no, I don't. So here is the issue. The issue is that whatever you or your child fall asleep with should be the same all night long. And so a sound machine is a good idea because you can leave it on all night long. as far as what sound, I see, strong recommendations from people about like water sounds versus jungle sounds versus white noise versus brown noise versus a noisy fan. They're all the same. The issue really is that, we all have sleep cycles. We have light sleep, then we go into deep sleep, then we go into dream sleep or REM sleep, and then our brains actually wake up. So you and I both woke up 4 to 6 times last night. We might not remember it because in general, we're so good at getting ourselves back to sleep. But if you don't have whatever you had when you first fell asleep, whatever you're used to having to fall asleep, then during those normal night wakings, your brain is going to wake up a little bit more. And that's why you hear from your kids in the middle of the night. It's not usually that they're waking up more than other kids. It's that they can't get themselves back to sleep. So in terms of lights and sounds, my only recommendation is really to get something that's the same all night long. Like I said, whether it's a noisy fan, whether it's cracking the door to the bathroom or leaving the hall light on or having a night light, you just want it to stay the same.
That's so interesting. I'm just thinking about all my sleep stuff now. I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Because we have a light for our son, but when we go to bed, we usually turn it off.
Yeah.
And then usually about 2 hours later, he can sometimes turn it back on himself, or he'll scream for us to turn it back on. So now I'm like, we should just leave it on. Like, why do we turn it off? Like, that makes no sense.
Either leave it on or work towards turning it off. I would say either one is okay. When it comes to a light, I think it can be helpful. Some kids are really sensitive and they cannot sleep with even a speck of light. Other kids can't sleep if there isn't a little bit of light. So those kinds of lights are not going to disrupt sleep.
That's good. Yeah. I'm like, might just leave it on tonight and see what happens. Thinking about children who wake up very early, or it feels like, I don't know, at least where I'm at in the UK, it's that whole in bed by 7, wake up at 7, need 12-hour kind of thing. For neurodivergent kids, I know it's different for every child, but how can we kind of help so that they're not waking up at 3 a.m. ready for the day? And kind of, give more of that.
That's a tough one. I think that's a tough one. In terms of knowing how much sleep our kids need, there are lots of reputable medical organizations that put out guidelines. So the National Sleep Foundation is one, babysleep.com you can find, the American Academy of Pediatrics is another one. You have to remember that those are also approximations. What I use to remember, I'm going to tell you all my memory tricks here, is 10 at 10. A 10-year-old in general should get about 10 hours of sleep a night. If they're younger, they might need a little bit more. If they're older, they might need a little bit less. Now, with neurodiverse kids, I would use that as a very general idea and look instead at how your child is functioning during the day. Are they falling asleep at school? Are they falling asleep at therapies? Are they really irritable when you wake them up in the morning? If they're falling asleep during the day and they're not of napping age, that's definitely a red flag. If they're sleeping 8 hours instead of 10 hours and they wake up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and happy and they're fine all day, then I would look more at that. And just remember that in kids, being sleepy can look a little bit different than it does in adults. They're not necessarily lethargic and low energy. Sometimes they can be more hyper, more irritable. But again, you know your child best. And so I would look at those things, how they're doing during the day instead of a specific number.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, and I like that, thinking through like, what does their daytime look like, and then kind of adjusting accordingly is such a good reminder. My final question that I like to ask at the end of every podcast is, what do you want the world to know about neurodiverse people?
I want them to know that even though neurodiverse people are more likely to have trouble sleeping, that there's hope and there's always something else to try. I've been doing this for more than 20 years. And I would say I haven't yet reached a point where I feel like, there's nothing else. There's just nothing else. And that doesn't mean there's a magic wand, but it means that science is always evolving. Information about health and wellness is always evolving. So I want people to have hope. And can I cheat and do one more thing too?
You can, yeah.
The other thing is to listen to neurodiverse people. For a long time, my son would tell me that he wasn't tired, and I would still have him get into bed. And my particular child cannot lie. So when he says he's really not tired and can't fall asleep, I have him color or do Legos for a little while until he tells me he's ready. Now that's my particular kid, but I would say listen to the person and don't give up hope.
That's so good. Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, that's listening can be on so many different levels as well.
Yeah,
right?
I don't mean just necessarily.
Yeah. But yeah, the idea of listening and getting their perspective, whether that be sleep or food or activities, they have, they can say a lot with their words or even with their actions and stuff as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing so much wisdom on, helping our kids to get better sleep, which in turn means we will get better sleep as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
I don't know about you, but I am walking away from this conversation with so much more understanding and honestly, a little relief. What Melisa said at the end really stayed with me, that there are always hope and there's always something else to try. And also to listen, to actually listen to our kids, even when what they're saying, telling, doesn't always make sense and might be even challenging what we think. That is such a quiet, powerful reminder. If you want to connect with Melisa and learn more about her work, you can find her at melisasleepconsulting.com. And of course, all the links will be down in the show notes. And if this episode spoke to you, I would love for you to be part of the Everyday Neurodivergent Parenting Summit happening May 11th to the 14th. It's completely free and it's a space built for mamas just like you, raising neurodivergent kids, looking for practical support and a community. I'm so excited for it and I can't wait to see you there. So let's go out there and continue the conversation and we'll see you next week.